Welcome back to another edition of Through the Smoke, a Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting podcast here on the 24/7 Sports Network. David Lake, joined as always by Gabby Urrutia. We are here to finally preview the season. It's game week, so we want to give our season predictions, talk about the team, talk about the schedule, what we think, how we feel like the regular season will end up. We want to wait as long as we can because things can pop up during the month of August before it's time to make these predictions. But we're here to do it. Football's finally here. Excited for this time. Before we dive into things, of course, join Canes Connection today. That, of course, is Miami's collective. Go to canesconnection.com. Type in the promo code 247friends and you get 50% off your first month there. Dan Radakovich spoke to the media yesterday. He was loving up on the job that Canes Connection does as a collective to support the University of Miami athletics program. Not all collectives are aligned with the university like Miami is with Canes Connection. It's been a really positive working relationship between those two, and it's a necessary way to support the program. So canesconnection.com. Also, our guy Nick Musarino of the Musarino Law Group. If you've been injured in a car accident, call 561-960-9870 or visit the musarinolowgroup.com for your needs. Nick texted both of us, Gabby, early Monday morning, game week. So he's fired up.
Ready to roll.
Notre Dame around the corner. Season's finally here. Enough of the talking. We're finally going to start playing games and see what it actually looks like in games. So, Gabby, let's just dive into it. We're going to go position by position. The way I want to discuss it is let's give grades, A through F. Let's give grades to a starter grades, and then depth grades. Because, as we talk about previewing a season, navigating a season, depth is critical and needs to be part of the conversation if you're trying to project, 3 to maybe even 4 months of football. You got to have your depth on point too. And so I think that's in my opinion, that's something that a lot of media just kind of overlooks when they talk about a season and how, projecting a team over the course of an entire season. So let's start at quarterback. Carson Beck, of course, is going to be the starter. I would give the starter grade here an A.
Mm-hmm.
The backup, Mario confirmed it. I believe on the Joe Rose show, he confirmed that Emory Williams is going to be the backup. Really no surprise there. Personally, maybe this is harsh. I would give that a C+. The way I view it, I think Carson is going to be an NFL draft quarterback, probably in the top 3 or 4 rounds. And then depending on how well he performs, he could go even higher than that. To me, that's an A grade. And then Emory, look, the way I look at Emory, I think he's fine in a plug-in situation where okay, we need Emory for one game to just hold things down. I think he can do that. Where I'm a little bit skeptical is if you need Emory for 4 or 5 games as a backup quarterback. That's where I'm just kind of you're kind of wishing and praying that you can go 500 over that stretch. So to me, I'd give that grade a C+. Where do you stand on this quarterback room?
With Carson, I'm with you. I gave him an A. At the end of the day, and this is a top 10 quarterback in college football. I think, same reasons he's a draftable quarterback. We'll likely hear his name called in, next April. So I think Carson Beck was an easy A for me. Depth, you went C+, I went C. Because I just think there's a drop off naturally. And look, at the end of the day, Emery has started games against Power Four. He's won a game against a Power Four team. He beat Clemson a couple years ago. So maybe C plus would probably be a little bit more fair. But again, I guess what I'm getting at is I think it's just sort of an average backup quarterback situation. And for those reasons,
Which
C,
is more of the norm
right,
around the country. It's hard to have a good backup
quality
quarterback
backup.
in this era. And so, look, if we wanted to look at things glass half full within that context, Emery's decent, right?
Right.
But the lack of like mobility and traits, over like a 5 game set would be hard, I think, to navigate. I think after 2 games, defenses would really kind of have the book on them. And, there's ways to win with average quarterback play, but it just becomes a little bit dicey. Bringing the conversation back to Carson, there's two things like we've talked about everything Carson does well, and, things that we've seen in camp and things, we've heard in camp as well. But there's two areas that I'm just curious, and I'm not saying he can't do those things. I think it's just critical that he does either improve in these things or just show that he can handle these situations well. Number one, I think the biggest question mark when we're talking about coming from Georgia and improving how he played from last year at Georgia, he needs to perform better when he's pressured. When the pocket collapses, or when there's a defensive lineman in his face, how does he handle those situations? Because that's when, last year at Georgia, he was particularly turnover prone, and his yards per attempt were particularly low. Look, every quarterback, their numbers, their splits when they're pressured are going to be worse than when they have a clean pocket. But Carson's variance in that regard last year was too wide. He needs to tighten that up. And frankly, like, again, the whole Cam Ward Carson thing, they're going to get compared just because Carson's immediately following Cam. But this is what made him elite last year: his improvisation ability, his ability to buy time and be a playmaker as a quarterback, as well as being the on schedule guy. And Carson is going to be terrific when he's on schedule. But when things break down, it just comes down to like, what decisions does he make? Does he throw the ball away? Does he find the check down guy? Or is he putting the ball in harm's way? So that's something that, I think he's got to show this year. The other thing, the other thing is, how does Carson perform on third down? Cam Ward was elite on third down last year. The Miami offense, Gabby, do you remember what Miami's conversion rate was? If you're going to guess, it was really high.
Was it in
What?
like the 70s?
No, 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 that'd be insane. So it
Right.
was
I don't know.
They were number one in the country. They were 56% on
Okay.
third down, which is insane. Like, third down, you're converting over half of your opportunities. And Miami did that as primarily a passing team. Um, Normally, those high third down conversion rate teams are your option teams, your teams that run and stay ahead of the chains that way. Now, I'm not expecting Carson to do that with this offense, but I do think, he's going to play a significant role in Miami having to convert third and long situations. And so can that mark be at like the 45% mark, which makes you a top 20 third down offense in the country? To me, that's where Carson needs to come through as well. And look, in a lot of ways, these things do kind of go hand in hand and overlap because defenses third down is the money down for defense, and that's when you see a lot of exotic looks. That's when pressures can happen. And so, how do you manage those situations? So, for me, those are the two areas. I think Carson's going to be really good at Miami this year, but those are the two areas I think if you want to get in the weeds and kind of monitor, okay, how does he handle these areas that maybe he could improve on from Georgia? Those would be the areas I highlight. Anything else to say on the quarterbacks to you, Judd or Luke? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just general depth. I mean, again, I mean, we'll see what it is with both those guys. I still think those guys are kind of a ways away, but I think in general, just from what we saw from both those guys, I
They
think
both
that
flash,
right, they
but
both have their moments, and so if we're evaluating the depth as a whole, I think that there's probably worse situations, right? Like I don't think it's a between Emery, Judd, and Luke. Again, who knows if there's a future starter of that group? I think that's still kind of to be determined. But Again, I think it's fine. Miami has a couple young guys, and I think Judd's starting to kind of flash a little bit. I'm curious to see what that looks like maybe even a year from now, if it kind of continues to kind of click for him. And I'm a Luke guy, so I like Luke Nickel, and we'll see how that goes.
All right, let's go to running back. So to me, maybe I was too harsh. I didn't know how to separate, I guess, starter grade and
Yeah,
depth grade. So
I ran into that problem
that might be a
with a
conversation.
few guys. Yeah, yeah. I think that's with a few positions. This is definitely one of them. But this was
So
I'm with you there.
so starter grade, I just assumed Mark Fletcher.
Yeah.
And again, we can have a conversation whether that will be the case. But I give that grade a B. I give the depth grade a B plus. And again, this is within the context of like, understanding that depth is still below starter.
Right.
So just because I give depth a B plus, that does not mean I think the depth players are better than the
Same.
starter.
Yep. I'm with you. I did the same thing on a few occasions. So
So again, like I think it's certainly on the table that Jordan Lyle ends up being running back one. I think that's on the table. I think this to start the season though is kind of going to be Mark Fletcher's job, but how do I think the carries will be distributed from a percentage perspective? Like if I was to guess, I would guess like Fletcher gets like 45%, Jordan Lyle gets like 35%, and Marty Brown I think gets like 20%. So I think they like this room in general. Three running backs. We've talked about how they're all over 200 pounds. I think they're going to lean on this group quite a bit to, be an efficient offense. And I think you're going to see some explosiveness, explosive potential from Jordan Lyle in particular. I'm excited to see how he looks in games. He's flashed a lot during camp, and now it's time for him to go be that guy in games.
yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm just a little bit higher as far as like the grade perspective, but I did the same thing as you as far as just giving the starter level a grade, and then the depth was just one above that. So starter level, I went B plus. We'll find out if it's Jordan Lyle or if it's Mark Fletcher. But I'm a fan of both those guys. I'm particularly a fan of Jordan Lyle. So if he is eventually the starter, I feel really good about that. But went B plus, and the depth, again, I'm high on this room. I think that this is a really good trio of running backs. It's probably not in that elite tier, but I still think you look around the country and you take the top three backs of a lot of running back rooms, and I think Miami's maybe at season's end, who knows? I think right now there are naturally some questions because some of these guys haven't really done the large work, workload, and other than Shamar
Right.
Brown at the FCS level. But I'm a believer in the talent of all three of these guys. Again, how it ultimately looks, we'll see. But as the depth, I kind of just used the big picture as like a whole. I just like the room a lot, to a level where I just kind of give it an A. The starter level guy, like the top guy, B plus, just because I think we're still kind of figuring that out. But
Let
yeah,
me ask you this.
go ahead.
Do you think there's a chance that the three guys, Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, Marty Brown, do you think there's a chance each one of them runs for at least 100 yards against a Power Four team this year?
I think that's on the table. Again, I think that's
I
all.
think it is too.
I think that's depending on a few. I think there's obviously different factors that go into that, right? Like it could be hot hand. I could see
Right.
Jordan Lyle being a 100-yard guy multiple times. I could see Mark Fletcher being a 100-yard guy. I think in a situation where Shamar Brown and you kind of let him loose against one of these teams, I think Shamar Brown could definitely be a 100-yard guy in these situations. And I think a part of that too is is the offensive line that they're running behind
Right.
also, which is going to create opportunities for them. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely
Which
see.
speaks to the depth is the
Right.
point.
And that's why I
Like,
think I just went with an A is because I think all three of these guys could be impactful players in Power Five, Power Four games. Like, we'll see what it looks like. I'm curious to see what the share looks like against a school against Notre Dame. And I'm also going to be curious to see what it looks like when we start ACC play and when we kind of settle into things. I don't really know how exactly it's going to play out, but I think however it does, assuming everyone's healthy, I'm a fan of just what's in the room right now.
do you think it's worth knowing about RB4 right now, or do you think it's kind of these three and that's what it'll be? Obviously, if they're healthy.
Yeah, I think if they're healthy, I would imagine it's these three, and maybe some guys get a couple snaps here or there, depending on. Again, I think a few different things. I think maybe just we talked about this with a lot of the freshmen. Maybe midway through the year, well, let's maybe see what you have in Gerard Pringle. I think that there's a chance in maybe certain instances, depending on the score or the opponent, if maybe we could see a little bit of Chris Wheatley Humphrey. I know Miami likes the way that he's added mass. His frame has gotten definitely thicker since he was at the high school. Since he was a high school player. So maybe there's opportunities for them to dig into like the 4 or 5 deep, maybe later into the season. But right now, especially against like the Notre Dames and the Floridas early on, like I would expect for it to just be these top three guys.
Wide receiver. Again, it depends on how you project the starters and all that,
Right.
but I just kind of went, whoever it's going to be. I I think the depth is maybe better than the
hmm
starters in terms
Same.
of just like, there's not a huge gap between the starters and the depth. But the starter level is not like elite, right? So I went starter grade B minus, depth grade B. Um, let's just go there. What
Yeah.
grade would you give it?
Yeah, I mean starter level I went C plus, depth B. So
Okay.
and that is mostly because I think there's just a question about who's going to be
Who's
one of
going
the
to lead the team in
starters.
receiving? Who
That
would
and
you
just
say?
like I mean I still think it's gonna be Malachi Tony. Like I really
Yeah, I
do
do
believe
too.
that. My question is like it's gonna be CJ
Who's going to be the
Daniels.
top four if you're going to list the top and go in order? So
Right.
leading receiver, Tony.
Malachi Tony. I would probably go CJ Daniels after that.
Agreed. This
Um
is where it gets tricky.
and then I think it's probably a combination of JoJo Trader and maybe if we're doing just wide receivers,
Yes,
probably JoJo Trader and Keelan Marion, if I had to kind of pin it down.
I
Um,
think that's fair.
I feel like that Keelan Marion JoJo Trader thing, it's like who's going to start against Notre Dame as far as just like availability. I think we've heard that. I feel like there's still kind of a question mark around JoJo Trader about what exactly that looks like going into the Notre Dame game. Is Keelan Marion kind of getting the start there? Um, so I think depending on that was whether I'm going kind of
I think Marion could get the start against Notre Dame, but I don't know if he's going to get the
It'd be the
start
start, right?
against
If you're telling
Louisville.
right, if JoJo Trader's in the lineup, I would probably go like again like B minus, maybe even B, just because I believe in the talent. Um,
Yeah.
if it's Keelan, again, I think he's an older guy and he's kind of been what he's been, and I think it's more just like you got to prove it that you're going to be able to do it in this phase of the game, in an impactful way, and I think that's why I was maybe just teeny bit lower on the starters, and then the reality of just okay, we like Malachi Tony. I think that's been very well discussed at this point, but still, you're starting a true freshman, which is always a challenge. And then you got CJ Daniels, who's a veteran guy, that went from Liberty to being, really, really highly productive player to Liberty, where it kind of maybe didn't all the way come together for whatever reason that is. And then coming to Miami, I think we feel good about what he's brought, but still,
Steady.
yeah, study and, maybe not just like a true outside wide receiver one type. So for me, there's still just general questions about like the starter level talent, but for the depth, I went with a B, and that's because again, whether it's Marion or JoJo off the bench, I think that's a good guy to have in your depth. Either one of them, plus Josh Moore, who I think we're both believers in, and then you got guys still like Ray Joseph, and you got guys like Tony Johnson who can give you valuable reps and things like that. So. I think the depth is solid, starter level guys. I think we just need to kind of go see it.
How shocked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked would you be if Josh Moore at the end of the regular season is the third most productive wide receiver?
I wouldn't be that shocked. I think that would probably be, depending on how that stacks up, it'd probably be pretty disappointing for one of either like a guy like JoJo Trader or Malachi Tony, maybe CJ Daniels, again, depending how it is.
Or
Um,
Marion?
or Marion, yeah. I mean, if we're talking top three and if we think Malachi Tony leads, so I'm assuming it's some combination of just like Malachi Tony, CJ Daniels, and then Josh Moore. Um,
Like, is it impossible to think that could be November?
no, I don't think that that's impossible. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Moore ends up in that top four at all. Like I think that that's on the table. Um, It just depends
Yeah.
on, I think it depends on when
Opportunities.
he,
Yeah.
right. When do they let him loose, right? Because if you're letting him loose in ACC play and you got other guys that have kind of started to kind of build it up or, just kind of catching up depending on the production also. But look, I would love Josh Moore. I think I'm kind of all in here on Josh Moore. So I'm here for that. I just feel like this receiving room to me is just it's kind of just like there's a lot of wild card factors in this receiving room. Like I think the talent is there, but I think there's also just some stuff that we need to just kind of see from the young guys, from the older guys. It's an interesting collection of talent. And then JoJo Trader of just between is he going to play? Is he healthy? Is he where he needs to be at this point? Is he going to take that next step and potentially be that guy we thought he was going to be? Is he just not that? Like, I still think that there's just a lot of things we just don't know yet. Not to say it's not good enough or it's not there. I just don't think we know yet. I think, like you like to say, like, questions don't necessarily mean that they're like,
Bad thing.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. We just don't know yet.
For me, like I look at this group and I think like, yes, during this first month of the season, play them, play your 6 or 7 and kind of let the cream rise to the top. My personal hope is that once ACC starts, you kind of know who your 4 are and you roll with that 4. That's
Yeah, I think
my
that's fair.
personal hope.
Yeah,
So if I'm projecting the 4 and they're healthy, it's Malachi Tony, CJ Daniels, JoJo Trader.
Josh Moore.
I mean, I think I would prefer Josh Moore. Do you actually do that move though? I mean, I'm a little skeptical on Keelan Marion. I
Yeah,
hope
I think
to
it's
be
on him though.
wrong. I hope to
It's
be
on Keelan
wrong,
Marion. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's going to
but
be on him to actually produce or not. And if he's not, then I
he
think
gives you some things that like maybe your fourth receiver is Josh Moore, but then Keelan Marion has a role for what he does well,
right.
if that makes
And that's
sense.
fine. If that's what it ends up being, I'm okay with that.
And maybe also just again, maybe JoJo doesn't figure it out, and it's Keelan Marion and Josh Moore as your
Yeah.
third and fourth most productive receivers.
Yeah.
All right, tight end. I don't know if this is going to be viewed as too harsh or I don't know.
Yeah.
I gave the starters. I gave Elijah Lofton a B. I
Hmm.
gave the depth a B minus, which honestly, like I feel like I'm kind of being nice on both of those, but
Okay.
I don't know. To me, like this is the spot, Gabby, where it's the biggest drop on the offense year over
Agreed.
year. Like I like Elijah Lofton for what he is, but for me, he's just a very good role player. I think he can be dangerous in the flats. I think he can be dangerous in the short area passing game on crossers. But if you need a downfield play or even like an intermediate pass, I don't know. I don't know if Lofton can consistently do that. He's a 6'1", 235-pound guy. I think there's some limitations there if you're asking him to do that. And to me, like Alex Bauman is your, tight end two, your inline guy. I think he's solid. I just again like, and part of this is maybe I'm warped by covering this program for 15 plus years, and so the tight end standard is very high that I've watched over the
Definitely.
years. And to me, Bauman's fine, but he's not like close to that standard in terms of like an athletic, big tight end. Now, I think he can be like an effective red zone guy. He can be a threat there. Um, and I like Luca Gilbert long term a lot. Does he get opportunities this year? We'll see. I mean, he's a true freshman tight end with, two guys that are just further along than him right now, above him on the depth chart. So, I think this group is good. Again, I'm giving them a B or a B minus, but like, um, it's a to me, it's a big drop off year over year from Elijah Arroyo, which also speaks to just what a freak he was
Yeah.
at tight end last year.
Agreed. I mean, there's no replicating Elijah Arroyo, and he's an NFL tight end, and he has the potential to be just a really, really good player in the league just because of what he can do athletically and stretching the field. Like it was just really impressive. So Elijah Lofton's definitely not that. I mean, total opposite from a prototypical standpoint, just the size of 6'1", 240 pounds or so. And so I get that. And again, a starter level. And this is another one that I don't really know how to stack it because, like, I don't know, are they going to start in 12 personnel? Like, keep hearing how they want to be in 12 personnel. So, like, both the starters, like, is there two starters? Like, I don't really know how to draw it up. If they were not drawing,
Let's
if they
call
weren't,
Lofton the starter,
yeah.
Bauman depth. Let's call it
Yeah,
that way.
okay. I mean, yeah, I think starter general, I mean, for college, for the college game, I am an Elijah Lofton guy. I believe in what this is. Again, I know it's not typical, um, but everything I hear on him and
I like him
is
too. I
yeah,
just
yeah.
don't know, like, is he going to get you 400 yards this year?
I think they think so, right? So I think I think that they feel like that's on the table for him, and just because of the way he can, kind of be a product of this offense and make plays within it. And I think the people just around feel like this is a kid who can be productive. Is it going to look like Elijah Arroyo? I don't think so. As far as just like go back to the Georgia Tech game of just kind of straight up the seam and he's kind of
Yeah.
gone for how, like, I don't think that's what it's going to
It's a
be.
lot of short passes and
Right.
yak. He's a
Yes,
yak guy.
exactly. And I
So
think there's different ways that you can use him in ways that they're just gonna I think they're gonna use him in ways that just puts the ball in his hand. And not saying that this is like
to
the
me,
blueprint.
he's most effective if the other receivers are really good. And
That's fair.
he gets forgotten about almost.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I don't think he can be a focal point. Like
No,
Elijah Arroyo could be a focal point.
yeah,
And like defenses had to be scared of him.
of
I don't
course.
know if Lofton's that guy.
He's probably
I
not.
sound like I don't like him. I
No,
do.
no, and
I
I know
just
you
don't.
do.
I just don't.
It's
You know,
it's
I
it's
don't know what he
different.
is.
I think
Yeah.
I think he's just an unorthodox player, and that's what makes him kind of. I think it's unique, and that's why I think there's just. I think that's why you feel how you feel, and honestly, like I'm a believer just because of what I've heard about. I think there's still so much about him that it's you
The
got to just kind of
mentality
see
is
it.
impressive.
Yeah, and I think okay, it's not like the blueprint that I'm saying like this is what it's going to look like, but you go back to the Iowa State game and you see the situations that Miami kind of put him in as far as just putting a fake punt in his hands. And
Yeah.
he's the guy they're going to run that play. Downfield pass, we talked about winning downfield, kind of gets held on a pass that he probably would have caught for a touchdown. So had a little bit of that. He had that kind of what like that post corner or whatever it is that he made a good play on that. But like I think that there's things there that make him super intriguing, and I don't know from a volume standpoint what it's going to look like. Again, if
Right.
people are game planning for him, like is he the guy you game plan for on offense? Is he like what's the role going to look like for him? But I do think in one shape, one form or fashion, like Elijah Arroyo, whether it's receiving yards, it could be all-purpose yards because again, I think they can use him in some carries like
I hope they
handoff running
do.
back situations. Like I think that's
I
very
hope
much
they
on the
do.
table. I think all-purpose yards wise at the end of the season, if 400 yards is the benchmark, I think we're going to get there with Elijah Lofton. For me personally, I can see, that number
That
even
would be
being a
good.
little bit, I can see that number being a little bit higher. But again, I think he's a potential outlet of the receivers maybe having question marks. I do think of the pass catchers, Elijah Lofton is a potential steady presence because you kind of know what you're going to get from him. Again, he's going to have to prove it against other defenses and good players, right? But I think a lot of the teams that Miami will play outside of like Notre Dame and maybe Florida, like I think I don't know how many of those rosters are going to have like basically linebackers or nickels or whatever that are going to be able to kind of cover him and kind of handle what he brings. So I think maybe it's not in these big games, but I think as we get deeper into the ACC schedule, I think there's going to be times where Lofton's going to break loose, and I think he's going to have some games that's just going to help him. I think he's going to just be efficient and effective and productive. But we'll see. I don't know. I just believe in him, so I'm going B plus, but
Okay.
long-winded way. Um, Depth. I like Alex Bauman. Again, Luke Gilbert, Owen Ruskovich. We cannot leave Owen Ruskovich out of
Yeah.
this conversation.
Solid.
Solid. Again, I think it's just a solid room, right? Like I think that they're quality
It
players
is.
as far as just the depth, as far as maybe the more traditional tight ends. Is it the best tight end room Miami's had here? As far as the top end
No, it's a
talent,
good
no.
room.
But I think there's different flavors in this talent. I think there's a couple of guys with that inline ability that you could actually trust in short yardage situations to just be, just go block, go do the right things, be big bodies. Owen Ruskovich is a big body. I mean, he's like 6'6", 250, maybe 260. Alex Bauman's a 6'4", 250, 260 pounder guy. Even a guy like you got Luka Gilbert, who's already 260 at 6'7", and
He's a
Jack Nickel,
monster.
who's a quality blocker type. So they got guys that if they get into some of these heavy packages, and look, that's a part of the tight end position is being able to block. It's not always about all the other stuff. I think they have quality bodies in there that can give you some more mass and some more ability along the line of scrimmage, and I think that there's value to that. So. For the room, I would go B, like depth of the room, and then Elijah Lofton. I'm just in on him. I'm here for it. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out.
Offensive line, I went with a starter grade of A.
Yeah.
I went with a depth grade of B. Um, and this is just how it is for that room. You're
Yeah.
not gonna have a, I don't know, maybe you could have a depth grade of an A on the offensive line,
hmm
but I think that's really hard to achieve. But their depth is good. I do like their depth. To me, it's just an excellent group. Like we've talked about it a bunch. The reason why I don't think the overall offense drops much, year over year, is because of this group. Um, I think you would agree. What is your starter and depth grade? What would
Yeah,
you do?
my starter level was an A. Tempted to go A plus just because I feel like at the college level, like what more can you ask for? I feel like, there's obviously elite groups, but I think Miami's offensive line is as good as you could really, realistically ask. Obviously there's a different
I
level,
don't
different
believe in
tiers.
A plus, just personally. So
Yeah.
A is the highest I go.
Yeah, I think it's a really good room. But yeah, I went A for the offensive line ultimately because I love this room. Depth, I went B plus, just because I think that there are three starter level talents potentially
Yep.
in the depth of this thing, and can go around the country, and I don't know how many offensive lines you can find that in. Maybe there are some, but I think from the starters to the depth, um, I couldn't ask for much more from Miami's offensive line room. So I think it's as good as it's been, as good as it kind of gets there. Up front for Alex Mirabal and these guys.
Who is the one guy on the offensive line they can't lose to injury?
Ooh,
And
um,
how would they plug it in to, deal with that, do you think?
um, that's interesting. I mean, I would probably. It might be James Brockermeyer.
Okay. So
I
are
mean,
you
I think they're.
uncomfortable with Rodriguez there?
I've just never seen it. I mean, I feel like we haven't seen it. I could
No,
get.
I think
I
it's
think
a fair
they're.
point. I
I
think
think that's the biggest. I think center might be the biggest drop off because I think there are answers. Because I think if any of the tackles go down,
what do you
I
do
th
then?
I think I would kick McCoy to tackle.
I totally agree.
I
Yes.
would kick McCoy to one of the tackle spots, and I would plug in Kinsler to at left guard or
Or
something along those
Samson
lines, or Sampson, whatever that looks like.
or Rodriguez.
Yeah, or Rodriguez. Like I think there are more answers along the interior line if you need to move McCoy to tackle. I think he could probably, again, this is just what I've heard from them is he could, probably play at either of the
Right.
tackle spots. So I think there are answers there. I think if you lose a guard, like let's say if McCoy or Cooper go down, I think that, again, there are answers there where you have Rodriguez who has started, you have Sampson who's coming along, and you have Kinsler who could play right guard. So I think center is a spot where it's like, I don't feel super confident in Ryan Rodriguez being the center. Maybe it's just because I don't know
Well,
what he
they've
can do
told
there.
us that with their actions, right?
Right.
Like he's kind of been on the roster the last 2 years, and
Yeah.
they've never like given him the job for whatever
Right.
reason. I haven't been
Right.
told why, but
Yeah.
they've gone out and got centers.
Yeah, and then to me,
But
SJ Alifatuli is just not ready for that quite yet. So that's why
would
I
you assume it is Rodriguez? If because I would.
in a game situation, yeah. Long term, maybe not. I don't know, but in a game situation, I think it would certainly be Ryan Rodriguez.
Yeah, but it's a strong group, excellent group.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to defensive end. Um, maybe I was a little too harsh here. I don't know. I'm in kind of like wait and see mode, I think, with
hmm
defensive ends. the talent is there for these grades to be higher for me at the end of the season if they go out and produce. But I gave the starters a B plus, so
Hmm.
Ruben, Bain, and Mesidor, and I gave the depth a B.
Hmm.
Um, and the talent, both starters and depth, the potential is to be higher than that.
Right.
But you gotta have both Bain and Mesidor healthy the whole year, I think, to achieve that. And the depth, look, it's former 5-star guys, highly rated recruits, etc. They just haven't had the opportunity yet. So we
Right.
have to see how they perform in games when it's time to roll. So look, at the end of the year, I think this group could certainly be an A minus, B plus, etc. But for now, going in the season, I'm going B plus and B. Where would you go?
Yeah, slightly higher on, again, but a lot of the same line of thinking. Just went A minus for the starter level guys, just because again, Ruben Bain and
Bane at his best is an A, right?
right, exactly. And again, this is a guy that's getting preseason wise, just getting some first round buzz. I think that
Yeah.
helps out. And then Messidor, I again just trimming down, leaning up. He looks great. I think
Hmm.
again probably going. I'm probably leaning more into the potential than into the what where we're at right now. So I think that's why I'm kind of going A minus there. Both guys have an injury history. Again, this room could be an A, but it's just the injury history of both guys. I think kind of is up for question. And depth wise, I went B plus, and could have gone B. Young room again, all the same reasons you said. It's a young room that's littered with 5-star guys. Eventually, those guys are going to have to play. And when you just consider the overall depth, I just because you can go to the former 5-stars, the Marquise Lightfoots, the Armando Blunts, those types of guys, and then you can even go to like a Malik Bryant, who's an older guy, to even dip into a Hayden Lowe, who's if those are your four depth guys, to me, I think that's solid. Again, just
Yeah.
comparing it to where we've
Who do
been,
you
and
get? Let me ask you this. Who are you getting? Because I think particularly Blunt and Lightfoot are performing well in camp. But who do you get the most buzz about of those depth guys?
yeah, I think Blunt. I think Blunt. I mean,
Agreed.
I think Blunt's the guy that I think they are just really believers in.
Yep.
I think it's because of what he can do off the edge and even what he can do on the inside. And he's strong and
He's
he
tough.
he
Yeah.
he would buck some reclassification trends for like line of scrimmage players because it hasn't gone particularly well for some of those guys that have done that in recent years. So if Armando Blunt like figures it out and he's kind of being a contributor on this defensive line, like that would be really encouraging because it's easy to forget that this is a kid who reclassified and this is technically supposed to be his true freshman season,
Right.
which is nuts. But yeah, he's a guy that's performing well and I think he's earning some playing time. And I like those guys. And again, I like how you can kind of start going back even further. And that's why I like the depth that this room has. Is it elite
It's not
depth?
as experienced as
Right.
last year's depth, but the talent is
Yeah.
more impressive and
Right.
the body types
Right.
are more impressive than last year's depth defensive ends, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I agree with you on Blunt. He's generating a lot of buzz. I do think like Marquise Lightfoot is the type of defensive end
Yep.
that Corey Hetherman likes to toy around with
Yep.
and use in a multiple type of way.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be a fun guy for the fans to follow in terms of like how do they deploy him
Right.
against a certain opponent each week because it could look different each week with his skill
Yep.
set.
Yeah, he's a guy that's like I don't know if this is gonna scare off some people, but like I've heard he's someone that's like dropping into coverage and like picking off passes. Like he's making plays on the ball. I don't know where he's at that point, but he's a guy that's making plays in the passing game as a defensive end. And then with his ability to get vertical too. Like I do think with Marquise Lightfoot specifically, they feel like he's a just his good is a good strong fit for what they want to do on defense.
Yes. D tackle, to me, this is one of the areas to watch
Yep.
in general in terms of like, okay, if it's look, if they play well, then this defense can be elite. If they play okay, this defense can still be good, I think, but it's just not going to hit that type of tier. Um, and look, they really need Justin Scott to be good. And they really need the top three guys, including Justin Scott, to stay healthy. Um, they have guys at defensive end that they can kick inside to eat some snaps and help in like passing situations. But to me, like, I don't know if they have a fourth defensive tackle. And, look, you could get into the weeds and say, well, who does have a good fourth defensive tackle? I think you would prefer to know who your fourth defensive tackle is, though.
For sure.
Um, so for me, like, I'll give the starters a B minus. I'll give the depth a C minus. I think David Blay, they feel good about from Louisiana Tech. I think Justin Scott flashes, and now it's just time to go see it in a game.
Hmm.
Like, how's it look in a game? He has freak potential. Um, and Moten for me, like, I kind of wish he had a better camp, quite frankly. But he's a solid rotational defensive tackle that flashes in big ways at times. Um, so I'd give the starters a B minus, the depth a C minus.
Yeah, starters, I went with a B, just because I think with both the starters, there are questions, right? Justin Scott, it's just all the talent in the world, but he just needs to take the next step. He needs to do it he actually needs to do it and produce. David Blay making the jump up from the group of five to the power four and expected to play a big role. I think there's questions about just how that's going to look on the field to get, in these major power four games. So I like both those two. And again, I think that starting group has the potential to, be better than that maybe down the line. And then the depth, yeah, I was probably generous with that. I went B minus, and Ahmad Moten is quality third defensive tackle. Um, I'm cheating a little bit because of again
Defensive
I know
ends.
right.
But
But
if you're
as
just grading
true defense,
DT4, yeah,
yeah, DT4, it's not good enough as
yeah.
far as just having a true fourth defensive tackle, and that's
They've been
potentially a
banged up
problem.
too. Like, I think all those guys, I don't think it's anything serious, but all those guys in competition for
Yeah.
DT4 have been a little bit banged up. So,
Yeah.
and they're just young too. Like,
Right,
I don't,
it's a bunch of young kids. Like they're young players and, maybe down the line, but right now I don't feel super comfortable with the depth of that specific position.
right. Linebacker, you got Motore and Wesley Bassint kind of cemented in as your starters. Grade I give those starters would be a B.
Hmm.
The depth for me, honestly, like, I'm still kind of uncomfortable with it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I think it's a drop off, and I think it's kind of a big drop off. I'd give it a C minus.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, starters, yeah, probably being more generous than you, David, but I don't know, it's fine. Motore and Wesley Bassint, B plus, maybe it should be a B. I mean, it's Motori's coming off his second major knee injury. At the end of the day, Wesley
He's
Bassint is
had a
still
good camp.
someone,
They both
yeah.
have.
Yeah, Wesley Bassint, someone who I think still needs to take that next step. I think I went B plus just because I feel like those are two really good players. Like I think that's a solid
Yes.
top end linebacker room if I was kind of drawing it up based on where we are right now. Um, if Motori is healthy, I mean, I think that is just a major like piece to this whole thing as far as I'm talking about healthy for the whole season. So
Yes.
I'm a believer in that. Wesley, I feel like he has another step he needs to take. Hopeful that he does take it. The depth I went B minus. I'm a Kamal Bonner guy. Um, I do think that there's something there. His NC State stuff, when he did play, he didn't start the season as a starter. He emerged as a starter. That's a defense that just I think to play linebacker in that Tony White defense, you got to be pretty good. And I thought that he was impactful once he kind of got on the field. I think while he played, he led the team in tackles. And again, I think there's just some stuff he needs to figure out. I think he's also kind of been dealing with some, minor stuff since he's really gotten here, where maybe it just hasn't all come together. But he's long, he can
He
run,
is long. He
and
needs to thicken up. And
yeah,
I think like I'm not anti Kamal Bonner, but I'm not necessarily sure. Like, I expected him to come in and really push Wesley Bassint,
yeah.
and I don't think that really happened.
Is that more about? Does that say more about Wesley, or do you think that says more about Bonner?
Yeah, Bonner.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe
And
it's
I
just
think
I.
Wesley's been fine.
Yeah.
Like I think he's taken the next step in terms of like getting stronger and stuff.
Right.
But, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we'll see with. I guess we'll see with Bonner. I know he's again. I think he's what they're looking for too. Former safety who's kind of spinning down to play linebacker. Like I know
right.
that's a lot of what Corey Heatherman's kind of looking for. Again, he's got to kind of do it. I know he's had I don't know if it's like a hammy or something like that. But he's been dealing with a little something. I don't know if it's like sidelined him or kept him out, but I think it's something that he's been kind of having to deal with or play through or figure out. So we'll see what that looks like for him. But again, what
Let
I
me ask
think.
you
Go
this.
ahead.
If Miami has to start dipping into its depth, right, at linebacker,
Yeah.
are you not worried that like these guys can hold the depth guys can hold up against the run? Because I
Yeah,
am.
I would be concerned about it. Um, it's not definitely not elite depth. This is not like I'm not talking like these guys are quality depth, but yeah, I know it would be concerning. It would definitely be concerning, especially at middle linebacker.
Right.
If it got to a situation where Motori, couldn't go and you have to kind of start dipping into some sort of
It's probably
combination of
Popo.
Popo Aguirre, is it Chase Smith? Like, saw some. I don't know if Chase Smith would be in that equation or Jalen Alderman, and it does get dicey pretty quick. I guess too
Like I'm
deep.
decent with their like I feel okay with their coverage depth. Like
Yeah,
Bobby Pruitt, you know, 2 minute drill, the other team's gonna be throwing the ball. Yeah, throw Bobby Pruitt on the field, let him be a coverage linebacker. Same even with like Kamal Bonner, right? But like when it if let's if Notre Dame's gonna be a physical game, you know, and let's say Torre and Bassett get banged up, and let's just say hypothetically you got to go play Florida with some of your depth linebackers. I don't feel good
yeah,
about
yeah.
stopping the
That would be
run.
scary.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for sure, for sure. I'm with you. I hear that.
Corner. Uh, I'm high on this group.
Yes.
I went starters A,
Mm-hmm.
depth A minus.
Yeah. I went starters A, depth. I mean, I went A, I guess A
Yeah,
minus. It's a good room. I
yeah.
think at the end of the day, I think there are probably five cornerbacks who are like starter level players, and you know,
Maybe even six, honestly,
yeah. I mean, between OJ Frederick,
if you're
Xavier
counting
Lucas,
nickel.
yeah, if you're counting the nickel, yeah, I threw this nickels with the safeties, but yeah, I mean, with Keontae Scott, you got six starting cornerbacks, six guys who you feel like could start for you. Um, yeah, I mean,
I think Jabori
it's a really good
Antoine
run.
ended camp strong too. Like in terms of like future.
Yeah.
Like I
He
think they
got
feel good
he got
about him.
banged up a couple times in high school, but like he looks like like as a corner, he looks
Yeah.
like $1 million. Like he looks like a prototypical corner with the size and the length, and he's thickened up too. Like he's already in like when I talked to him in the summer, he said he was already like 187 pounds or something like that. Like he's got some mass to him, and he's over six. I would think he's probably
Yeah,
like
he's
six
tall.
one,
Yep.
over 6'1" maybe. So there's something there for sure.
Yeah. And just in general, like I think Frederic and Xavier Lucas are going to be two of your better corners in the ACC. There's a real debate between third and fourth corner with Ethan O'Connor and Damari Brown. And, again, we've talked about how Brantley's your fifth corner. That's a really good
Mhm.
situation. So,
Multi-year starter in the Big Ten.
right,
That's a good situation to be in.
right. And they have an answer at nickel.
Right.
I will say nickel's another situation where I wonder what they would do if that one got banged
Hmm.
up. I don't know. I mean, I would hope that Damari Brown would be willing to go do that
Yeah.
personally, but
Right.
hopefully we don't have to cross that bridge. Safety, starter grade, I gave a B minus.
Hmm.
Depth grade, I gave a B minus, which might be high. I will say, like, for me, this is the group that maybe I've changed my opinion on most
Hmm.
coming out of camp. I do feel like some depth emerged. I like Jacoby Thomas maybe more than I expected. Zechariah Poyser, I think, is reliable and solid. Is he a playmaker? I don't know. Probably not, but I think he's solid. And then, some of the depth, like I feel good about Dylan Day as a depth guy. I think Bryce Fitzgerald down the road has star potential with the way he can be a ball hawk at safety. Um, but again, I think it is a volatile group too because they all have questions, right?
Right.
Poiser, G5 guy. Thomas, G5 guy, made the jump to Tennessee, was a rotational guy at Tennessee. Now he's your full time guy at Miami. Dylan Day, Bryce Fitzgerald, both are young, haven't played yet. So they need reps, they need to see things, etc. I think it's important to work those guys into games that you are controlling in the second half, just in case. Um, but overall, I feel okay about this group. I think the corners being good will help that group be okay. And I feel better about this group for next year too, because I think Dylan Day, Bryce Fitzgerald can help you next year as
Yep.
well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you there. Starters B minus also. Depth I went C plus. So for once, I'm
Yeah,
the one that's a little lower. But what I wrote on that was like that's higher. The depth grade was I think both grades were
yeah,
probably higher than I would have thought I would have given this
right,
even a few weeks ago. So I agree that this is a room that I think we both feel a little bit better on going into the season. And I think we were kind of walking into camp feeling like Markeith Williams might have to be your third safety, and I think we're kind of talking about him as like maybe a fifth or
yeah,
potentially a guy that's who knows if he's even in the rotation. That's a good thing. That means at least two quality
yes,
depth pieces emerged in camp. One of them being a really promising true freshman. The other one, I don't think he redshirted because he plays so much special teams, but a second year player in Dylan Day, who you feel good about for as a depth piece now and potentially, for the future as a guy whose role could expand. And then feeling just better about Jacoby Thomas and Zechariah Poiser, who again, I just feel like we might just be a solid player, like a guy that
right.
is just good, which is perfect. I think that's all anyone wants from the safety position. And so yeah, I definitely feel better about this room in particular going into the season than I did going into fall camp.
So overall, 50,000 foot view of this roster. Overall, I feel good about this team because, the David Lake algorithm. It passes the eye test of being strong at the four most important positions: quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, and corner. Um, I'm a little bit nervous about the depth of the spine of the defense,
Hmm.
and to me, it's critical that those guys, number one, stay healthy, and also too, like again, you got to find ways to get them in games and develop the depth when you can eat some snaps there. So overall, I think this is the best roster of the Mario Cristobal era here at Miami, and it starts at those four critical spots: quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, corner. Running back's also strong. Tight end's also strong. I think wide receiver is going to be productive. Is it like NFL talent? The older guys probably not, but maybe the young guys emerge and that really shows. But overall, I like this team a lot.
Yeah, same. I think that this is a really good, well balanced team, and going into year four, I think this is what we kind of hoped it would look like eventually, and I think that this is a football team that's built to win, games, especially just in the ACC. Within that context, built to, especially on the line of scrimmages, to play deep into the year. We talk about November, how it kind of tends to fold. Like I think that this is a team that's built to play deep into the year. It's constructed in a way that it should last. And again, there's obviously questions as far as depth and all that. But I would rather be in a situation like this with Miami's roster than have uh, other there's worse situations to be in, from a roster construction standpoint. And look, I like this team. I'm curious to see how this goes. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of like new,
Right.
and in this era of college football, that's something that we need to kind of just grasp. Where this is, it's kind of a new team every year. There's obviously some mainstays and some pieces, but I think that this is a roster that we're still going to learn a lot about. Like I'm curious, before Florida State, when we kind of hit the reset button, uh, with that first bye week, how we're gonna, is it a
Right.
bye week before Florida State, right?
Yes.
Yeah, bye week before Florida State. I mean, I'm curious what our conversations are going to be like then, and if we have the feel on the team that I think that I think we do have on it. But yeah, I'm excited to watch this team compete because I think this is, again, to your point, this is the best roster, and I know we've talked about this. I think this is the best top to bottom roster that Mario Cristobal's had so far here.
All right, let's get into the schedule because again, the roster's good, but football's not played in a vacuum. Who you play and when you play them also matters in terms of navigating a season and your total record for the season. So we don't have to talk too in depth on all these teams, but just the way I want to do this, Gabby, we'll go through all the teams, kind of lay out how the schedule lays out, right? And I want for each game, each team, I want us to give a danger rating in terms of like on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the possibility of Miami losing that game, in our opinion, right? Um, so Miami starts, of course, this Sunday with Notre Dame. We'll talk much more in depth on a Notre Dame preview, the game preview podcast. Um, but for me, like the danger rating of this game, I put it at like a 7.5.
Yeah.
Game ones are weird. Game ones against quality opponents are especially weird. I do think they have one of the best rosters in the sport, but quarterback and defensive tackle is a question mark for them. Those are two really important um, spot on any team. Jeremiah Love will probably be the best player on the field. Can Miami contain him? What is CJ Carr's first start in a hostile environment? How does Carson Beck perform against an excellent secondary? Um, we'll get more into Notre Dame here later on in the week. But to me, this is a 7.5. I think Miami. I think this is going to be a one-score game, and
Yeah.
we don't need to spoil who we're going to pick to win the game. But certainly Miami, I think, can go toe to toe with Notre Dame. They just got to execute and finish in that fourth quarter. But still, this is absolutely a losable game. 7.5 for me on the danger scale.
Yeah, this is probably like an 8 for me on the danger scale, just because again, this is a game that Miami realistically could lose. I think Notre Dame is, I mean, these are the national runner-ups. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. We'll get more into again both
Yep.
those guys later in the week, but I think Jadarian Price, along with Jeremiah Love, makes up. You know, I don't know if I guess I would have to look more into this, but like to me, it doesn't get much scarier than that as far as
It's
one-two
them in Penn
punch.
State.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Nicholas
That's it.
Singleton and Katron Allen.
Yeah.
Again, those are the two probably the two best running back rooms in the country. Um, and again, there's this you have to respect this Notre Dame roster and the way that Marcus Freeman has constructed it. They're really good, especially on the defensive side. Again, so yeah, this is a game that Miami realistically could not win. So I'm gonna go 8 on the danger scale, and excited to talk more about them later this week.
Next game is Miami's FCS opponent, Bethune-Cookman, September 6th. To me, this is a 0. It just is what it
Yes,
is, right? I mean,
right,
this is how it is, and you know, we don't need to say much about that.
right.
Same for
I'm
you.
with you. Yep, with you.
Next week is USF comes to Hard Rock Stadium on September 13th. USF, man, they got a tricky open to the schedule. Are you aware of who they're
Yeah,
playing?
they got Boise State to
They got
open, right?
Boise State, then they go to Florida,
Florida, and then they play here.
then
Then they play us.
Miami.
It's tough.
So they're going to learn a lot about themselves over
Yeah,
these weeks. Of course, Byron Brown is an athletic quarterback, and those are always tricky to go against. And for the G5 level, they're solid at the line of scrimmage. And Alex Golish, I think, is he gets the most out of his team.
yeah,
But for me, I'd put this one at a 2.
yeah. Pretty low. They got gutted too, kind of in the
Right.
transfer portal. I mean, losing Bernard Good into
G5 is
LSU.
so hard.
Yeah, it's
It's
tough, man. It's a tough gig, truth. Like you're just if you when you discover something, it's just like so did
it's gone.
everyone else and it's
Yep.
gone. And honestly, good for them for like retaining Byron Brown because like that's another situation
Right.
that could have gone sideways and it didn't. So having him back is a win. Oh, I heard I know Ivan's mentioned this. Like I guess their backup quarterback got drafted like from in baseball and then just like left. So I mean it's just a maybe tricky situation behind them. I think did he get injured in the Miami game last year that he had to kind of come out or
Yeah, he dealt
so in
with
a
injuries all year last
yeah, and I
year.
mean after two physical games right before Miami, maybe something to watch out for, just as far as
Yeah.
what shape he's in going into the Miami game, and after all of that. And then after, again, yeah, I was probably more concerned about last year's USF team than this year's, because I think anyone that was kind of pretty good on that USF team last year got poached, unfortunately. So yeah, it's tough situation.
What's your number?
Two, yeah, two or three, two or three. Those G5 games can always get a little tricky, especially in the first half. So not super concerned about it.
The next week, Miami hosts Florida. Um, to me, I put this one above Notre Dame on the danger
Mm,
scale. I got Florida at a 8. Well, it's qualified. 8 with Lagway, a 5 without Lagway,
yeah, there
because
you go.
who knows who knows if DJ Lagway is gonna what that looks like this
Right.
year, because he hasn't played really since last season in terms of 11 on 11 work in practice at Florida. But if he is healthy, they check all the boxes of the David Lake algorithm: good quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, and corners. They check all those boxes. I think their roster is more well rounded than Notre Dame. And, maybe we'll feel differently after that Notre Dame game. Maybe if CJ Carr balls out, look, you got to tip your cap. And maybe if Notre Dame figures it out at D tackle, they'll be the better roster. But I think right now on paper, I think Florida's roster is better if DJ Lagway's playing. And look, I mean, we talk about how, it matters what they're doing too, coming into the game. They play at LSU the
Hmm.
week before Miami, so that's significant. That'll be a good way for Miami to read what they are. I will say this, like, and I'm not taking anything away from Miami's butt kicking performance last year, but that Florida team Miami played last year is going to be significantly different than the Florida team they're getting this year.
Yeah.
Last year, if you look at the players that played in that game against Miami, they weren't the same players playing at the end of the season for Florida. They figured things out during the course of the year, started playing better football. So, you know, I think Florida with DJ Lagway is a real threat. I give it an 8.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I'd probably go seven on this one is just because of that gauntlet and the question marks of what it ultimately looks like. That Florida LSU game is a big rivalry. It's
It's a
physical.
war.
It's on the road. Um, and then this is a second consecutive road game coming off of that war. So, and as the great David Lake loves to say, football is a war of attrition. So, um, obviously both teams could be dealing with injuries at that point, but just coming off of that LSU game, the high or the low of whatever the result of that one is. I'm just curious what the roster is going to look like, and then they have to gear up for of course an SEC slate. So Florida has a tough road, and I think that LSU game is going to be a big one, kind of determining. It's not going to be the end all be all of their season, of course, but I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what Florida's about and who they are going into the Miami game. And again, losable game, absolutely a losable game for Miami. But I'm just curious to see what it's going to look like for Florida at that point. So we'll see.
Miami then has their bye week. They can kind of recover after that's their non-conference schedule, right? So they got through that. And then they start ACC play on October 4th at Florida State. So their biggest in-state rival. Um, look, to me, like Florida State, I would put it at a 4, because I think FSU is just a mess from a roster standpoint. Did you take a look at that too deep, Gabby?
I
That
did.
for they released at Alabama. Let me ask you this: like, it's just a bad roster, really bad. Like,
It's
how
not good.
many of those players would start for Miami?
I think probably no more than two, maybe
Who
three. I
who
think
would they
three
be?
is
Like
probably
Deuce
the max.
Robinson at
Dudes Robinson
receiver?
probably start at receiver. I think Daryl Jackson would probably start at defensive tackle. I think Edwin Joseph would be
He's
maybe a toss up.
intriguing as
Toss up.
like, yeah, as a rotational
Yeah, I think he
talented
could
guy,
potentially be a rotational guy or even like a nickel behind Keontae Scott
right?
if he was on this team. Squirrel White's been injured. I don't know. I don't know. Like with
Nah,
Malachi Tony or Squirrel White, like I don't see that. So like again, to me at best, it's three, and two is probably the more likely number. It's not good, coach.
that's just a significant gap.
That's year
Like,
six for that
yeah,
coaching staff. That is
it's well
not the
below the
way,
standard.
not
You're
the way I
not
want my
beating
roster looking like in
you're
year
not beating
six.
Miami with that discrepancy of a roster. And
Yeah, I'm curious who they are going to beat with that roster. Truthfully, we'll see.
well, FSU, like, it's interesting, right? Because again, you're right. Like, it's year six, and this is their roster.
Yeah.
And,
They're a couple
F
injuries away. Again, guys are going to get hurt. They're a couple injuries away from being in a really weird spot, like
I think
roster
they already
wise.
are,
Yeah, they're
honestly.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're already there, and it's just like, ugh, I don't know.
To me, like FSU media likes to make fun of Mario for like, you know, how he is as a game day coach, which okay, that's fine, right? And if you want to do that, that's fine. But like Mario runs laps around Mike Norvell the other 350 days of the year in terms of like running a program. And that's much more important relative to achieving success than the 12 Saturdays. 12 Saturdays it matters, and that's what they're ultimately judged on. But
Right.
it's the other 350 that determine the success of Saturdays. So, talent acquisition, running a program that holds players accountable, having a good strength program, keeping coaches accountable in recruiting. These are areas where like Mike Norvell just stinks, and this is where Mario's elite, and this is why things are where they are
Yep.
because players win games, and so that's where you know has FSU media made their season predictions yet for
I,
this?
I haven't. I haven't heard. I haven't heard yet.
I haven't seen yet either. It will always be funny to me how they watched a 13-1 team in 2023. They watched them practice, they watched them playing games. Then 2024, they watched them practice in the spring. They watch all of fall camp, and they predicted that team to win 9 or 10 games. And then they go 2-10, and they were one of the worst teams in the sport.
I'm with you. I think we said this last year.
They
I
say
think before the season started, we were just calling this stuff out. It's like, man, you just saw what this looked like. Like, I don't know.
they were
This does not look
saying
the same.
some of the craziest stuff last year, like this offensive line is gonna be one of the best in the ACC and the best of the Mike Norvell era. This defensive line is gonna have 4 first-round picks. This run game is gonna improve, even though they lost Trey Benson and don't have anyone talented to replace him with. It's gonna be an improved run game. Cam Ward has a higher ceiling, but DJU has the higher floor.
Oof. That was a
This is
good one. That's a good one.
this is the fastest Mike Norvell has
Oof.
ever been. Uh, no, sorry, fastest team. He is also fast because he
Yeah,
does
you
races.
see the sprints. I mean, those are
Yeah,
impressive. I mean, I won't need
I
some
can't hit that
posts.
speed.
No, I can't either. That's good stuff.
Like I don't know if they got anything right from last year, and I would love a documentary on how FSU media covered that 2024 team because it was just chef's kiss. Anyways, I think like in general, this is where FSU like finds its level, right? So 2023, they went 13-1. Last year they went 2-10. To me, they're like a 6-6 team this year. Um, and like Miami fans should hope that they go 7-5 so that they keep, Mike Norvell there as long as possible.
Yeah, I do not feel good about the roster that Florida State has put together. Yeah, I mean, danger level of the game rivalry in the road in Tallahassee. It's always going to be a nice environment, assuming everyone's still invested in the team at that point. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, like 4, maybe 5 to be generous to the Knowles up there, but not too like Florida State is not on my top concerned list when I kind of go comb through
They just don't
Miami's
have good
schedule.
players. They just don't have good players.
Right.
And they're
It's
running
more.
a weird system on defense that's like a G5 deal, and they don't even have the personnel to run that system. It's like, I don't know.
It's some interesting decision. I mean, how about Gus Malzahn running the quarterback room and what was it? They UCF started 4 quarterbacks last year and none of
Mhm.
them got hurt. And it's just like now we're just entrusting this guy to run the offense.
It's a train wreck. Yeah, it's a train wreck. All
Yeah.
right, so then Miami has a bye week. So again, it's a weird schedule. They got 2 bye weeks around the Florida State game, but they do get a bye week prior to Louisville, which I think is good. On the flip side, though, one thing I don't like is that Louisville also has a bye week going into this game. So that's not great for Miami because you're
Yeah.
giving Jeff Brom more time to prepare for this game. Um, this game worries me. And
Mhm.
so I'll put this game at like a 7.
Yeah.
I will say if this game, I do like that it's before a bye, so then at least Miami can prepare for them too. If this game was like in November and Miami didn't have a bye, it'd probably bump this danger scale up to like an 8. But like Louisville to me has the best skill talent. Like take the quarterback out of the equation. They got the best skill talent
Hmm.
um, in the ACC.
Right,
Isaac
for sure.
Brown's elite.
Yep.
Duke Watson, very good
Yeah,
backup
good running
running
back.
back.
I think they have a third running back that's pretty good too.
Chris Bell, Colin Lacey,
Yep.
Trayshawn Hurry, Dakari Collins, Bobby Golden. Like they got
Jalil Skinner. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I know. That's good. Um, they got some real receivers. So
They
okay,
do.
like what is Miller Moss? Who knows? But like Jeff Brom typically figures it out with his quarterback. What is Louisville at the line of scrimmage? They rely heavily on the portal, so who knows? And again, games against Jeff Brom, they're shootouts, and those make me nervous. So I
Yeah.
will say, like before you go, like to me, this is a game where Miami having 5 corners is going to help because they can, in theory, throw those corners at these receivers, load up the box, and try and manage that, dual threat ability of or that balance of Louisville that they bring to the table of because they're going to be explosive through the air and on the ground. If you devote numbers to taking that ground away and you trust your corners to hold their own on islands, that's how you got to get it done against Louisville. But to me, this is going to be a shootouty type of game, and who knows?
Yeah, this is it's gonna be interesting for sure. Jeff Brom has been awesome, I think, at Louisville, and he does a really good job. And these Miami games have always been tough. A couple years ago they came down, beat Miami here to clinch a spot in the
He's the
ACC
one.
championship game.
He's the one that kind of showed how to beat Gidry in that
Yeah,
23 game,
it's never been the same.
right?
Kinda, yeah. In hindsight, I hadn't really thought about that, but it kind of makes sense. Because they had been good kind of up to that point.
Yeah.
Um,
And it was a lot of shifts and
yeah.
motions and just tight end stuff in the red zone. It
Right.
was like, oh,
Got owned by like tight ends that had never played that hadn't played all year. He did. He kind of whipped up he kind of cooked up the formula to
yeah.
kind of beat him. That's a good
Florida
point.
didn't watch that game, I guess.
Clearly
But
not. But yeah, I mean, look, and I think that there's value into a guy like Miller Moss kind of coming in and looking to get back on track. Under an offensive-minded coach like Jeff Brom, like who's a quarterback who gets it. Like I think Miller Moss is talented. I think that there's something there. I think he showed flashes during the times that he did perform well, and I think you never really know what you're going to get from someone like that when they're kind of they regain that confidence and they're in a system where they do have the weapons. Like there is a lot of interesting weapons that Louisville does have. So I think on offense they're going to be a ton of fun to watch. The bye week, again, I think it helps Miami, but Louisville has one too. So that'll be interesting to see where Miami's kind of at after that. But danger scale, yeah, I mean this was probably the ACC game I'm maybe most concerned about as I kind of look through the schedule, just because of that offensive firepower. It's probably not much of like as much of like a power run game. This is more of just kind of like
slashing
yeah, exactly, and
speed.
that can be tricky.
He's
That can
so
be problematic.
fast, man. I was at that game last year in Louisville, and he is sudden. Like
Yeah,
his speed is impressive. Um,
yeah.
and it's important to win that game from a tiebreaker perspective too.
Hmm.
Like if you're talking about ACC wins and losses, that's a game Miami kind of needs to win, I think.
Right.
Next game's on October 25th against Stanford. I put that as a 1. I don't know what more to say about them.
Yeah, I mean, pretty low. They just lost to Hawaii to open the
Right.
season. Um, Not good. Stanford is a project beyond projects here in the ACC. So I think it's a good kind of buffer point between
Yeah.
Louisville and SMU, which is probably my biggest takeaway of that Stanford game is, you know, regardless of the result of that Louisville game, I think you have a chance to kind of reset as a team, and then you're off to SMU to kick off your infamous November.
Yeah, so that's the first trip outside of the state of Florida for Miami, November 1st at SMU. I put this game at like a 5, honestly. Like I'm a little skeptical on SMU this year. I was last year as well, and I was wrong. But I'm skeptical on them this year. I don't know if they have the same horses they did last year. I think they lost a lot. Like Brashard Smith
Hmm.
was a big deal for them.
Huge.
I don't know if they've replaced him. Those Miami defensive linemen were also really
Good for them. Yep.
significant
hmm
contributors on defense. Have they replaced that? I'm a little skeptical. Now they do have Kevin Jennings. I think he's a good quarterback.
Yep.
I think their O line's pretty good from an ACC standard. Um, but I put this one at a 5.
Yeah, I think I don't know if like I think Romello Brinson's like starting for them. So I mean, I think you definitely lose some of like the offensive weapons. Got Jordan Hudson, who's like a former five-star, who I mean, he's been okay. But yeah, I mean, from a running back standpoint, I think they're kind of working in a new guy. I think they brought in a UCLA transfer. They have the kid
Right.
that I can't remember the kid's name right now. That is from the state of Texas. That's coming into there. Obviously, Chris Johnson transfers into there. It's probably a better fit for him just offensively. I know they're good at tight end. They got R.J. Maryland, and
Right.
I know
Is
the
he a
other
full
tight
go
end.
yet?
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I know they have two that apparently they feel good about. But for me, it's again, this comes down to kind of like to me when Miami plays teams like this, it's just like how are they kind of going to be able to hold up on the line of scrimmage
Right.
against a team like Miami? And I think that this is an area where Miami is going to have an advantage in most, if not all, ACC games that they
In
have
November,
that they play.
lean on that.
Exactly, exactly. Just late in the season, getting first time kind of traveling out. This is their homecoming, I'm pretty sure. So this is going to be
Yes.
as wild of an environment as you're going to get as far as just true road games. I think this is probably the I mean, definitely. I mean, I guess Florida State's always, it depends how Virginia Tech.
FSU will be.
Yeah, but
FSU will
I
be.
think SMU will also be just like a big, nice road environment. So, okay, there's going to be a ton of buzz, a ton of energy and juice around that game. I think Miami's got to lean on how much of an advantage they're going to have on the line of scrimmage. SMU's going to have to prove that they can kind of hang in the trenches, and I think that that's the separator for me here. And that's probably like, 5 or 4.5, 5. I think is probably where I'm at. Like I think this is a game that Miami should win and should control if they're the team that we think that they are.
Next week, November 8th, they go to, or sorry, Miami hosts Syracuse. Again, I don't think, like, Syracuse caught lightning in a bottle last year. They were really good offense, really good receivers, really good running back, really good quarterback, and, they could put up some points. This year's team, they lost a bunch of guys and don't have the horses. They also lost guys, I don't even know, like offensive linemen and defensive linemen to like big programs like Texas, I think might have taken one of their D linemen, if I remember right.
hmm
So they just kind of
Yep.
got picked apart. A lot of the ACC, honestly, except for like Miami and Clemson, got picked apart. Um, I have this game at like a 4. Like Steve Angeli's their quarterback this year. He's fine to me, but like he's a total game manager, and I don't know if they got like weapons around him. Like who's it? It's Jonte Cook, I guess.
Jonte Cook seems to be like their guy. The Demetrius Samuel two-way. To me, that's just kind of like an indication of where things are at.
Gimmicky, yeah.
Yeah. And again, look, Jonte Cook was a top recruit who signed with Texas.
He's talented.
Had to, transferred. It didn't kind of come together for him. Got into some trouble in the offseason, landed on his feet at Syracuse, and I think people feel like he's a good. But again, they lost Trevor Pena. They lose Jackson Meeks, who had an awesome preseason. I know they have
Gadsden.
they lost Gadsden. They lose the running back that was awesome
Yep.
that got signed with or got drafted by the Jaguars. Can't remember his Allen, LaQuint Allen.
Yep.
I know they have the kid that transferred from Colorado State last year that has like the hyphenated last name. I can't remember his name, but like, he's a long receiver who kind of started to piece together at the end of the year. There's a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
Again, you got bringing the quarterback, a spring quarterback transfer, and I think that, that's kind of an interesting situation too. And I know you've said this, David, and this might be more of just like the reality of like kind of like the reset of the Syracuse, Fran Brown era of just kind of truly having to rebuild it. I mean, Trevor Pena
Yeah.
too, all these guys lost defensive linemen and some key defensive players
He
too.
is a good coach, but doesn't have the horses this
Yeah.
year.
Kind of a while. I mean, you never know because I mean, could be this is kind of like my take for like the next 4 games. I guess maybe we'll get into that later. But like, there's some like wild card aspects of like these last 4, like these November games
Yeah.
for Miami. Syracuse, we'll see. I mean, I would lean no, but you never know. They figured it out last year, so who knows what their season looks like at this point.
Did you give a number?
No, danger would probably go 3.
NC State the next week on November 15th. I got this one at a 6, probably because I
Wild
think,
card game, I'm telling you.
yeah, I think CJ Bailey's going to be pretty good, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't take that step, then I'd put this game at like a 5. But NC State's just always an annoying team,
Hmm.
and I think they'll have a pretty good quarterback in CJ Bailey. Their defense, I don't think is like overly talented, but they do play hard for Dave Doran. They have some pretty good pass catchers. Justin Jolly's a good
Hmm.
tight
Tight end.
end.
Yep.
Noah Rogers is talented. He was
Yep.
started his career at Ohio State. Wesley Grimes has some production to him from his time at Wake Forest. So I'd put this one at a 6 if CJ Bailey takes that next step.
Yeah, Hollywood Smothers is another guy. I think that they're believers in over there. Just a running back. I think he's from the area, but I think originally was it Oklahoma he originally signed
Yep.
with, and he's back home. Same with Noah Rogers. Kind of went to Ohio State,
Yep.
came back home. There's talent. There's talent there. Yeah, to me, new defensive coordinator too. Tony White took the head coaching job at
Yep.
Marshall, so I mean they're installing a new defense over there. They've always been super salty on defense, but curious to see what it kind of looks like. I also like, I don't know, David, is this kind of like a make or break year for Dave Doran? I feel like he's been there for a while.
I,
Um,
it
I
might
feel
be. I don't
like
know.
if it,
But
if again
yeah.
if they feel like kind of a wild card where it's just like if this doesn't click this year, if it just doesn't go well, I feel like NC State's one of those like kind of just like CJ Bailey could figure it out and they could be like a solid, tough
Right.
out in the ACC, or this roster that again another one that kind of got picked apart a little bit in the transfer
Yep.
portal. Like maybe it just doesn't come together, and even if CJ Bailey is okay, it's just probably just not good enough. So I think it's an interesting kind of like limbo year for NC State, and I'm curious which side of it they fall on, which is why I feel like all these games, are like you kind of have to feel out where these teams are at this point of the season, and where that again, Miami should win this game, and you got Spike Souls. How about Isaac Souls, former Miami target, starting at center as a true freshman? But again, that's kind of like where NC State's at. You got a true freshman
Yeah.
starting along the
He is
interior
good,
offensive line. He's a good
but
player. He's a good player. He's a
yeah.
he's a big boy, and his dad is played in the NFL. Like he's a good. Miami had to make a
Nasty.
decision.
Yeah.
Miami had to make a decision at center last cycle, and they went with SJ Al-Fatuli, who's going to be a really good player too. But Spike Souls was a really good prospect that they really loved too. So not super surprised to see that, but. Yeah, it's interesting to me who NC State's going to be. I don't know if I said my score already, but yeah, maybe like 4, 5,
Okay.
depending on a few things.
Virginia Tech. I this they go at Virginia Tech on the
Hmm.
22nd. I put this one at a 5. I'm not a believer in their roster in general. Like it is a tricky place to play, but like is it gonna be a rocking environment if they're not having a good season? Is their head coach even still there?
Right.
So and last year, like Bashal Tutin was a
Freak.
nightmare to deal with. Like he's like tackling a fire hydrant. And I think we saw the best of Kyron Drones in that game last year. And he made things difficult in some ways, but they are another team that got picked apart by the portal. And
Pretty
so
hard.
we'll see what that team looks like from a talent perspective. But
Yep.
it's on the road, so I'll give this one a 5.
Yeah, Jalen Stroman. We're going to see Jalen Stroman, former starting safety for Virginia Tech for the Irish on Sunday.
Yep.
So he's one of the guys, Mansour Delane, their starting cornerback. Goes to LSU. They had an interior offensive lineman also go to LSU. A tough situation for the Hokies. And I was looking at their depth chart that they dropped, and I'm just like, there's like three guys here that sound familiar, and one of them I only recognize because it's Caleb Spencer, and he played here
Right.
before he transferred over there. It's like Kyron Jones and Donovan Green, who was at Wake
Right.
Forest,
Wake.
right?
Yep.
And I think another guy that they had was at no, maybe that was a different team, a different depth chart I was looking at. But yeah, Donovan Green, which is an interesting outside weapon. Um, yeah, to me, this roster is interesting. Kyle Altuner, too, at center, West Virginia transfer. He was actually pretty good for
You
their.
like centers, bro.
Dude, I don't know, man. I'm just all in. Thing is, I do you know what it is, David, is that I do I try to like deep dive the portal and like I try to see
Right.
like who are some of these guys that make sense and some of
Miami
these.
needed a center.
Miami
Yeah.
needed a center. Like Kyle Altuner was a name that I was kind of like fired up. I was like, man, this could be a good option. He actually ends up transferring, but lands at Virginia Tech. So, only reason I know that name, truthfully, probably the only reason I know Donovan Green. I feel like we know because of just
They
being in the
played Wake
ACC,
Forest
right?
last year. Yeah.
But yeah, this Virginia Tech team is just, it's hard to project. Multi-year starter at quarterback in Kyron Jones. Another one to me is just like, this is going to be one situation where Virginia Tech's just going to be bad at this point, or they're
Yeah.
just going to be chugging along and it's going to be like, man, crap, you got to go to Blacksburg and play a feisty Virginia Tech team that's just like tough, and you don't, and it's going to be November and it's going to be cold and you got to deal with the environment and all those things. So that's why I feel like it's just a tricky spot. Just uncertainty. I just don't know where these teams are going to be at this point, because they all feel like kind of like middle to potentially bottom middle tier ACC teams. And but yeah, danger score going to Blacksburg in November. Don't love that. So I'm probably going to go 5.5.
Then Miami wraps it up on the 29th, Thanksgiving weekend at Pittsburgh. This is always a dangerous spot
Yeah,
for
do not
Miami.
love this one at all.
So I put this one at a 7.
Hmm.
Look, Eli Holstein, I think, is a solid quarterback. He was solid when they got off to their fast start. They started getting some injuries. He got injured as well, and things kind of fell apart on them at the end of the year. They have Desmond Reed, who, South Florida guy, but he's productive little running back for Pittsburgh. They always have a solid offensive line.
Mm,
They got dudes on defense, Kyle
yep,
Lewis and
stud.
Rasheem Biles at linebacker, and then they
Good
always
linebackers.
they always figure out pass rush. And Pat Narduzzi teams just always play hard. So I put this one at a 7.
Yeah. Who's the no 7-2 easily. Like this is a game that I'm not thrilled about. Cade Bell, a former Western
Yeah.
Carolina offensive coordinator that got that program kind of humming with all these South Florida guys. Got an opportunity at Pitt. He's ran with it. That offense is fun. It's something you have to kind of prepare for. Desmond Reed is an awesome fit. He's a two-phase player. He's a guy that on special teams can give you a fit also, as well as just being like a really, really productive running back and pass catcher out of the backfield. So he's a weapon. Eli Holstein now is a veteran guy who's started, and this will be the back end of his second year as a full-time starter. Again, going to Pitt where it's going to be cold, and this is a last game of a season that again we saw what happened last year, having to go up to Syracuse, and there's a lot at stake, and it's potentially a huge kind of make or break game. Like I could see this game having a ton of stakes for Miami as far as like them needing to go up there and get a win against a
And
team.
Narduzzi would want to spoil it.
Right,
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, I mean they're going to be like Pat Narduzzi's just he's a good coach, and um, they always bring it, and they
Yeah.
got some good defensive players in that front seven. Well, I'm trying to remember. Oh, Francis Brew,
Yeah,
former
yeah.
like he was like a in-season interior defensive line target for Miami, who they ended up kind of just like not kind of going all in on, has emerged as like a
Yeah.
really solid
He's like their
player.
latest undersized
Yeah,
stud D tackle.
exactly. And
So,
so he was good for them as a freshman last year. I know he's one of the
yeah.
guys that believe is in line to start for them this year. So they got some guys that can play on that defense, and what they do on offense is fun and tricky, and it can be problematic. I think they got the kid from Central who originally signed with Louisville, I believe, and now I think he's at Picateris Hicks, I think his name is, and he's someone that has some juice. I'm curious to see what his role looks like in this Pitt offense, but they're gonna have speed and they're gonna have some playmakers with that Cade Bell group. So yeah, this is a tricky spot for Miami late in the season. It'll close out the regular season.
So let's end it here. Let's give our final regular season prediction. How do you want to do this? You want me to go first? You want us to both just say our numbers and then we'll ramble as to why we said our numbers, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, no, go. You can go first, and then we can bounce off each other. It's fun.
So I'm gonna go with 10-2.
Same, we're on the same spot there.
So it's the same record as last year. Excuse me. But I do think this is a better team than last year. I think this year's team would beat last year's team. And I go 10-2 because, look, I think it's a more meaningful 10-2 this year compared to last year because this schedule is tougher. You got those two hard non-conference games rather than one. So, Gabby, let's since you're 10-2 as well, let's have this conversation because I
Yep.
do think the way the 10-2 happens matters in a
Right.
significant way.
Right.
And for me, like I think there's three scenarios that I think 10-2 can happen. Scenario one would be Miami goes 3-1 in non-conference play, and then 7-1 in ACC play.
Hmm.
To me, this is like the best case scenario because you'd have the solid non-conference win, and you'd have the 7-1 record, which likely puts you in the ACC championship game. Frankly, like I think this is the most possible, most likely scenario for
Yeah.
Miami.
And that's where I'm at with it. That's how I drew it up.
Um, okay, well, let me ask you this: the 3-1 non-conference, right?
Hmm.
Is it more important to beat Notre Dame or to beat Florida, or does it not matter to you?
Doesn't matter to me. Um, I think for perception reasons, like,
I
you
think
know,
you got to beat Notre Dame
yeah, I think
because I
there's
think Notre Dame, I think they could still go be a college football playoff team
for
if
sure.
they lose to Miami.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so you're going to need that resume win over Notre Dame. Whereas, I think Florida's a good team, but they gotta play in the SEC. And is
Yeah.
a 7-5 Florida going to get respect like that on a college football playoff resume? Probably not.
Yeah.
Now, Florida's the in-state rival. I get all that, but like if we're just talking about who you need to beat between the two to get to the college football playoff, I think it's unquestionably Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I also think like if you lose to Notre Dame and they become that team, and like let's say it's a one score loss, but you beat Florida and you got like the one ACC loss, and I still think that that's like a fair. Again, I think we've learned too, David. Like early in the season, if we're talking about maybe losing games, I'd rather lose those games early in the season, and later in the season you kind of figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I think winning one of those two games to me is super important. Like I think you just got to win one. Like I don't want to go into ACC play with two losses because I think it's just like a confidence thing. Like just what like I think if you're going into ACC play and you've already lost to Notre Dame and you've already lost to Florida, to me that's probably a sign of, again, those are two good teams, but like maybe you're just more likely to trip up. I think if you have the ability to beat one of Notre Dame or Florida, I think that just tells you like, hey, we're like this is a really good team and they can go out and do this thing. But yeah, I mean, I see your point. Like, I think beating Notre Dame is super important. I think that that would be a big, just like huge boost of confidence, and I think it
Momentum
would just
too
tell
and
a
all
yeah,
that.
just I think it would t say a lot about where Miami's at, at this point. So that's a big one for sure.
I also think like within this needing to go 7-1 scenario, like I think it's critical that Miami wins, and obviously you got to beat Florida State, but you also have to win that Louisville game to me
Yeah,
because I think if you drop Louisville, it's asking a lot to go. What would it be then?
seven, yeah, 6 straight games.
Six straight wins you'd have to reel off, and I
Yeah,
think it's possible. I just think it's tough to expect any Power Four team to go win 6 straight games.
margin of error just becomes very thin.
Right. Right.
So
So,
I'm with you
and the
there.
tiebreaker stuff, like you
Yep.
need to beat Louisville. You
Yeah,
need to do that.
Louisville's a top. They'll be a contender. So that's one you got to have.
The
Which
other
we saw was
scenario,
benefited them last. I mean, if they would have won the Syracuse game, but like Miami having the
yeah,
tiebreaker over Louisville was valuable at the end.
right. So the other scenario would be Miami goes 4-0 in non-con, and then 6-2 in ACC. Like this would be the second most probable scenario to me. Um, the problem with this is the 6-2. It really puts you on the bubble, probably on the outside of
Hmm.
getting into the ACC championship
Need
game
a lot of help.
in a 17-team ACC.
Yep.
So that that would be 10-2, but it would be, I don't know if you get in the college football playoff if that scenario happens. The other scenario, which I think is kind of the most unlikely, honestly, like again, I think so. The other scenario would go you go 2-2 in the non-con,
Hmm.
so you lose to both Notre Dame and Florida, but then you rip off 8 straight in ACC play.
Hmm.
And look, I don't think the ACC is very good. I just think it's very hard to go rip off 8 straight wins against Power Four opponents. Um, I think that's really difficult to see happening. But if Miami did that, they would be in the ACC championship game and thus have a real opportunity to. I think honestly, you still probably got to go win that game to get in. because then the question would be like, okay, who did you really beat in the like if they lost to, let's say, Clemson
Hmm.
in the ACC championship game, but they lost to Notre Dame and Florida, but
Yeah,
ran through the ACC. It's kind of like, okay, well, who'd you beat?
right. It would not be a good enough resume
Yeah,
to, or again, there would just be too much. I think it would leave too much to opinion and
you'd
just
have
to
to beat Clemson,
chance. Yeah, you would have to win the ACC also. Um, yeah,
which would
it's
be
interesting.
hot. Maybe that's possible, but
Right. Again, I think
uh,
it all comes down to just the most important thing here is just winning the conference.
yes, yeah. And look, that's the big challenge, right? Because like for the most part, they Mario's been pretty good in these early season games, and I think Miami's going to be on point against Notre Dame. I think they're going to be on point against Florida. The question, as we've talked about, is that November month where things just kind of peter out. So, long way to go. But we're excited. It's finally here, week one. We'll dive deep into Notre Dame here
Hmm.
later on in a future podcast. I think big picture wise, Gabby, I think you agree, right? Like, I don't think much of most of these ACC rosters outside of Miami and Clemson. And so that's why I'm a big believer in this team in general, but they have to go out and do it. They need good luck in terms of injury, and they just got to go out and perform. But I think the pieces are there. Now it's time to go perform.
Yeah. Now's the time for Miami to get this thing done. I think it's been building to this. Still a long way to go, from a roster construction standpoint, but just within the scope of the ACC and the conference, like this team is
Yeah.
good enough to go do that. So it's time for that to be the expectation. Last year, obviously, that was the expectation, but now it's time for them to execute and go do that. So let's see how this thing goes.
All right. Appreciate everyone for listening. Until next time, take care.